Stay with me, we're almost there.
It hurts.
I know, just hold on.
Madison Carter worked as a waitress at Magnolia Street Cafe in Hell's Kitchen. The cafe sat on a busy street corner, always filled with the smell of fresh coffee and baked pie. It wasn't glamorous, and it wasn't what she had dreamed of doing when she moved to New York, but it paid her rent. Most days, that was enough. She had been working there for 9 months. 9 long months since she left Ohio with 2 suitcases, a laptop, and big plans. She had imagined skyscrapers, creative jobs, exciting opportunities. Instead, she found herself carrying trays, wiping tables, and counting tips at midnight. New York was expensive. Rent took most of her paycheck. Groceries were overpriced. The subway added up. Every dollar mattered. Every shift mattered. Every tip mattered. She lived carefully, always calculating in her head. How much was left, how much was needed, how long she could stretch things if something went wrong. About 10 weeks ago, a new regular started coming in. He first showed up on a Friday night. Madison didn't notice him right away because Fridays were always busy. But after a few weeks, she realized he wasn't random. He came every Friday. Always Friday. He always chose the same booth, the corner booth near the window. The lighting there was softer, and it gave him a clear view of the entire room. He always ordered the same thing, black coffee and a slice of whatever pie was featured that day. He always stayed almost exactly 45 minutes, and he always left a $20 tip on a $12 bill. At first, Madison thought he was generous. Sweet, even. Good regulars were rare. Good tippers were even rarer. In her world, someone who tipped like that was someone you treated well. So she smiled a little more when she brought his coffee. She remembered to check on him at the right time. She asked how his evening was going. It felt normal. On his 3rd visit, he introduced himself. "Brian Caldwell," he said, offering a polite smile. "Madison," she replied. He told her he worked in finance. He said it casually, like it didn't matter. He mentioned he lived alone nearby. Said he liked the atmosphere of the cafe. Quiet, comfortable, not too loud. Madison kept her replies short but friendly. That was her job. Friendly, not personal. Over the next few weeks, she began to notice small things. The way he watched her when she walked across the room. The way his eyes followed her instead of returning to his phone or his coffee. The way his smile lingered just a little too long. At first, his compliments sounded harmless. "You look pretty today, Madison. That shade of lipstick suits you. You should wear your hair down more often." They weren't rude. They weren't aggressive. They weren't something she could complain about. They floated in that strange space between polite and uncomfortable. She told herself she was overthinking it. But over the weeks, the compliments shifted. "You have beautiful legs. You must get a lot of attention walking around like that. If I were your boyfriend, I wouldn't let you work this late." Each sentence was delivered with the same calm smile, the same soft voice, like he truly believed nothing he said was wrong. Madison's stomach tightened every time he spoke like that. Still, it wasn't enough to report. Not enough to risk drama. She needed this job. So she tried to avoid his table when she could. If another server was free, she asked them to take his order. If she could pretend to be busy, she did. But Brian was patient. He would wait. He would sit there with his coffee untouched until she had no choice but to approach him. Sometimes he asked for her by name. Sometimes he stayed until closing, forcing her to be the one to bring the check. He always timed it perfectly. Fridays became something she dreaded. She would wake up already thinking about it, already bracing herself. And then Friday came again. That night, he arrived around 10:30 p.m., half an hour before closing. He walked in calmly, like always, sat in the corner booth, ordered black coffee and pie. Madison's smile felt tight when she served him. Everything seemed normal at first. But 45 minutes passed, and he didn't leave. She cleaned tables. She counted tips. She stacked chairs in the back section. He stayed seated. The cook clocked out and left. The manager locked the back door and told Madison she could finish up. Still, Brian remained. The cafe slowly emptied until it was just the two of them inside. Madison felt it. The quiet. The weight of it. Finally, she walked to his booth. "I'm sorry," she said gently. "We're closed." He smiled up at her like he had been waiting for that moment. "You work too hard," he said. "Let me give you a ride home. It's late. Not safe for a girl like you to take the subway at this hour." "I'm fine," she replied quickly. "I take it every night." He stood up slowly. "At least let me buy you a coffee for the road." You don't have to do that, she said. But he was already moving. He stepped behind the counter without asking. Without hesitation. Madison froze for a second. He poured coffee into a to-go cup. Added cream. 2 sugars. Exactly how she took it. Her heart skipped. He had noticed. He had memorized it. He pressed the lid on and held the cup out toward her. Please, he said. After all the service you've given me. He was standing between her and the door now. Not aggressively. Not obviously. But enough. Madison weighed her options. Argue and escalate, or take the coffee and leave. Her chest tightened. Thank you, she said finally, forcing her voice steady. He handed her the cup. His fingers brushed hers slightly. His eyes moved down her body again, slow and deliberate. Anytime, he said. The word lingered. Madison walked toward the front door. She didn't look back. She stepped outside into the cool night air, the noise of the city rushing back around her. She inhaled deeply. You're fine, she told herself. It's over. She heard the cafe door open behind her. He left too. Her pulse quickened. She walked faster toward the subway station a few blocks away, the coffee warm in her hands. She kept her eyes forward, kept her pace steady. You're fine, she repeated in her head. You're fine. You're fine. The subway entrance was only a few blocks away, and soon she would be home. She took a small sip of the coffee as she walked. It tasted slightly bitter, but she barely noticed. All she wanted was to get home, lock her door, and forget about another Friday night at Magnolia Street Cafe. Madison walked quickly toward the subway station a few blocks away, her steps sharp and steady at first. The night air felt cooler than she expected, brushing against her skin as she moved. She tightened her grip on the to-go cup Brian had handed her, telling herself not to overthink the strange tension she felt. The street was moderately busy for midnight. A group of tourists laughed loudly outside a bar. A couple argued near a taxi stand. Music drifted from somewhere down the block. Cars passed, headlights flashing across the pavement. It felt normal. It felt safe enough. She took a small sip of the coffee. It tasted normal. Maybe slightly bitter, but coffee was bitter sometimes. Especially the last pot of the night. She didn't think much of it. She kept walking. She took another sip without hesitation. By the time she reached the next block, something shifted. The streetlights began to look too bright. Not just bright, harsh. Almost glowing. The white light seemed to stretch and smear slightly at the edges. She blinked hard, assuming her eyes were tired. The city sounds started to change too. The music from the bar sounded distant. Conversations felt muffled, like they were happening underwater. Even the hum of traffic seemed far away. Her steps slowed. Her legs felt heavy. Not tired heavy. Not sore heavy. Heavy like she was walking through thick water. She frowned, confused. Maybe she hadn't eaten enough. Maybe she was just exhausted. It had been a long shift. She rolled her shoulders and tried to shake it off. Just fatigue, she told herself. She lifted the cup again and took another sip without thinking. Almost instantly, her vision blurred at the edges. She stopped walking. The buildings seemed slightly tilted. The ground didn't feel stable. Her balance wobbled beneath her like she was standing on a moving train. What? She whispered under her breath. Her pulse spiked. She slowed down, confusion mixing with alarm. Something wasn't right. This wasn't normal tiredness. This wasn't just end-of-shift exhaustion. The coffee cup slipped slightly in her hand. Her fingers didn't feel steady. The cup slid from her grip. It hit the sidewalk and split open, coffee splashing across the concrete. Madison stared at the dark liquid spreading across the ground. And then the truth hit her. The coffee. It wasn't fatigue. It wasn't hunger. The coffee was drugged. Panic shot through her chest so fast it almost made her gasp. Her breathing turned shallow. Her body felt wrong. Like it wasn't fully hers anymore. Her knees buckled slightly. She reached out blindly and grabbed onto a parking meter to keep herself upright. The cold metal steadied her for a second. Think. Phone. Call someone. She forced herself to focus. She needed her phone. She reached into her purse, but her hand felt strange. Slow. Uncoordinated. Like the signal between her brain and her fingers had been delayed. Her fingertips brushed her wallet, her keys, but she couldn't grip properly. Her hand shook. Come on. She tried again. Her fingers wouldn't obey her. They felt disconnected, numb at the tips, clumsy and weak. Fine motor control was slipping away. She fumbled uselessly inside her bag. Her heart was racing now. She couldn't stand here. She couldn't stay still. She forced herself to move forward. Her first step was uneven. Her second step almost sent her sideways. She stumbled, barely catching herself. Behind her, a voice cut through the muffled air. "Need help." Her heart slammed painfully in her chest. She turned slowly. Brian stood a few feet away. Too close. Too calm. His face looked relaxed, concerned even. But there was something underneath it. Something steady and certain. Madison's stomach dropped. He followed her. Of course he followed her. "You don't look so good," he said, stepping slightly closer. "Maybe I should give you that ride after all." "No," she tried to say. The word came out wrong. Slurred. Weak. Her own voice sounded unfamiliar to her ears. She pushed off the parking meter and tried to run. Her legs refused. They moved, but not fast enough. Not strong enough. She stumbled forward, nearly falling. She forced herself to keep moving because stopping meant he would reach her. "Don't be difficult," Brian said behind her, his tone still calm. "I'm just trying to help." Help. The word made her skin crawl. She could hear his footsteps now. Not hurried. Not panicked. Controlled. Confident. He wasn't chasing her like someone afraid of being caught. He was walking like he knew she wouldn't get far. The crowd on the next block was thinner. A couple glanced in her direction, noticing her uneven steps. One man slowed for a second, then looked away. No one wanted to get involved. Madison opened her mouth and tried to scream. The sound that came out was weak and broken. It barely rose above the city noise. Her throat felt tight. Her tongue felt thick. She tried again, but her voice distorted into something that didn't carry. Her legs dragged. Her body felt heavier with each step. Her eyelids drooped slightly. No. No. She forced her eyes open wider. Stay awake. She couldn't pass out. Not here. If she fell. She didn't let herself finish the thought. She staggered forward into the glow of a streetlight. The white light blurred around her, stretching like smears of paint. Her vision doubled for a second. Her knees nearly buckled again. Brian was closer now. She could feel his presence behind her like a shadow. "Easy," he said softly. "You're going to hurt yourself." She kept moving, even if it was only inches at a time, even if it felt like dragging chains. She had to stay upright. She had to stay conscious. Her breath came in shallow pulls. Her chest burned. Her limbs felt distant. The world around her tilted slightly. She realized something terrifying. She might pass out in public. Right here. In the open. And if she did, he would catch her. Her heart pounded harder. She fought it. Fought the weight in her limbs. Fought the pull in her eyelids. Fought the fog spreading across her mind. Brian's footsteps drew closer. She could almost feel his hand reaching. Madison clenched her jaw and took another stumbling step forward. Just one more. Just stay standing. She staggered fully into the center of the streetlight's glow, barely upright, vision swimming, legs trembling under her weight. And she fought with everything she had left not to fall. Madison barely had strength left in her legs when headlights suddenly flooded the street beside her. A black SUV pulled up so abruptly that the tires squealed against the pavement. The sharp sound cut through the night air, turning a few distant heads. The vehicle stopped inches from where she staggered under the streetlight. For a split second, Madison thought her mind was playing tricks on her. Then the driver's door opened. A tall man stepped out. He wore a dark, sharply tailored suit that looked expensive even through her blurred vision. His presence was immediate, controlled, intentional. He moved with quiet authority, like someone used to being obeyed. Lorenzo Bianchi. His eyes swept over Madison first. Not in the way Brian's had. Not lingering. Not invasive. Assessing. He took in her unsteady posture. The way her shoulders drooped. The way her eyes struggled to focus. The tremor in her legs. Then his gaze shifted. Locked. On Brian. And something in his expression changed. Concern vanished. In its place came something colder. Sharper. Lethal. Without hesitation, Lorenzo stepped forward and placed himself between Madison and Brian. His body formed a barrier. Solid. Unmovable. The air seemed to shift with him. He spoke in a low voice, edged with a faint Italian accent that made every word heavier. Touch her and die. The words were simple. Absolute. Brian stopped walking. The confidence that had followed him down the block flickered. What? Brian forced a small laugh. I don't know what you think is happening. She's my girlfriend. Madison swayed slightly behind Lorenzo, trying to keep her balance. She's not your girlfriend, Lorenzo said calmly. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. She's drugged. Brian's jaw tightened. She's just had too much to drink. You drugged her, Lorenzo cut in smoothly. You followed her. I know exactly what you were planning to do. The street felt very quiet suddenly. Brian's eyes darted around, looking for witnesses for help. You're crazy, Brian said quickly. I don't want trouble. Lorenzo's lips curved into something that wasn't a smile. It's too late for that, he said. You already have trouble. He stepped half an inch closer. I am deciding, he continued evenly, whether to kill you here in the street or make you disappear somewhere quieter. Brian took a step back. His earlier confidence was gone. Look, man, Brian said, holding up his hands slightly. We can just walk away from this. Lorenzo's gaze never left him. No, he replied softly. We cannot. He reached into his suit jacket and pulled out his phone. Madison watched through a fog as he made a call. His voice changed slightly when he spoke, faster, fluid, rapid Italian spilling from his mouth in clipped sentences. She didn't understand the words, but she understood the tone. Command. Authority. Finality. He ended the call and slid the phone back into his pocket. My men are coming, Lorenzo told Brian. They're going to have a conversation with you about tonight. Brian swallowed. You can't just. Oh, I can, Lorenzo said quietly. And what happens to you, he continued, depends entirely on what they discover. If you are smart, you will tell them everything. Brian's breathing quickened. And if you are very lucky, Lorenzo added, his voice dropping even lower, you will die quickly. Two large men stepped out from a side street, almost as if summoned by shadow. They moved with purpose. Clean suits. Focused eyes. No hesitation. Brian spun around, trying to calculate an escape. It was too late. They grabbed him before he could take more than one step. Hey, Brian shouted. Let go of me. You can't do this. He struggled, but they were stronger. More prepared. I'll call the police, he yelled. You're assaulting me. Lorenzo laughed. It wasn't loud. It wasn't amused. Please, he said coldly. Call them. Tell them Lorenzo Bianchi's men took you. See how that works. The name landed. Brian's face drained of color. He knew it. Whatever he had thought this situation was, it wasn't that anymore. The two men shoved Brian toward another dark vehicle parked further down the street. He kept shouting, protesting, promising lawsuits, threatening consequences. No one intervened. No one stepped forward. The car door slammed shut. The vehicle drove away. Just like that. Madison tried to process what had just happened. Her mind felt thick. Slow. Her legs trembled harder. The adrenaline that had kept her upright faded. Her knees buckled. The world tilted sharply. She felt herself falling. But she never hit the ground. Strong arms caught her mid-fall. Lorenzo moved quickly, his reflexes precise. One arm slid under her knees. The other supported her back. He lifted her effortlessly, holding her close against his chest. I've got you, he said quietly. His voice was different now. Gentler. You're safe. Madison tried to speak. Tried to tell him about the coffee. About what Brian had done. Her tongue felt thick. Words tangled in her throat. Nothing came out clearly. Sure, Lorenzo murmured. Don't try to talk. He carried her to the SUV and opened the back door. The interior smelled faintly of leather and something clean, expensive. He lowered her carefully onto the seat, supporting her head so it wouldn't fall back. She blinked slowly, fighting the darkness creeping in at the edges of her vision. Hospital, she managed to whisper. The word barely formed. Lorenzo shook his head slightly. No hospital, he said softly. Too many questions. Too much attention. His hand brushed her hair back from her face. My doctor is better, he added. And discreet. The SUV pulled away smoothly from the curb. Madison felt the motion beneath her, steady and controlled. Lorenzo slid into the back seat beside her and lifted her upper body slightly so she wouldn't lie flat. He wrapped one arm around her shoulders, keeping her upright. Her head felt heavy against him. The city lights outside blurred into streaks of white and gold. Sleep, Lorenzo said quietly. It's okay now. I've got you. His voice sounded distant and close at the same time. Her eyelids drooped despite her effort to keep them open. The last thing she felt was the steady warmth of his arm holding her in place. The last thing she heard was him repeating that she was safe. And then everything went dark. Madison woke slowly. The first thing she noticed was the quiet. Not city noise. Not traffic. Not voices. Just stillness. Her eyes opened to a dim bedroom washed in soft, indirect light. It wasn't completely dark, but the lighting felt controlled, gentle, almost careful. She lay beneath sheets that felt smoother than anything she had ever owned, silk-like against her skin. For a moment, she didn't move. She didn't recognize the ceiling. She didn't recognize the room. Then her head throbbed. Pain pulsed behind her eyes. Her mouth felt dry like cotton. A bitter aftertaste lingered on her tongue. Memory hit in fragments. The cafe, the coffee, the street, Brian, the SUV. She pushed herself upright too fast. The room spun violently. The walls tilted. The floor seemed to shift beneath her. She grabbed the mattress with both hands and squeezed her eyes shut. Move slowly. The voice came from somewhere to her right. Madison's head turned sharply toward it. Near the window, partially outlined against the faint city glow, sat Lorenzo Bianchi. He was in a chair, posture relaxed but watchful. "You've been asleep about 7 hours," he said calmly. "The drug is mostly out of your system." She swallowed hard. Her throat burned slightly. "You'll still feel some lingering effects," he continued. "Dizziness, dry mouth, weakness. That's normal." Madison blinked, trying to focus. "Where am I?" she asked. Her voice sounded rough. "In my home," Lorenzo answered. "My penthouse." The word hung in the air. Penthouse. He stood slowly and walked a few steps closer, stopping at a respectful distance from the bed. "A doctor examined you while you were unconscious," he explained. "He checked your vitals. You'll be fine. No permanent damage." She stared at him, trying to process. A doctor. Unconscious. Her heart skipped. She looked down at herself. She was still wearing her work clothes. Her blouse. Her jeans. Even her apron was still tied around her waist. Her shoes and socks were gone. Her breath caught slightly. Lorenzo read the shift in her expression. "I did not undress you," he said immediately. His voice was firm but controlled. "The doctor only checked what was necessary. Your dignity was protected." Madison let out a slow breath she didn't realize she was holding. Her fingers tightened slightly around the fabric of the sheets. "Thank you," she whispered. She still felt shaken, vulnerable, unsteady. Lorenzo's jaw tightened subtly. "What happened to you?" he said quietly. "Should never happen to anyone." There was no performance in his tone, no exaggeration, just anger held tightly in place. "It happened in my territory," he added, voice cooling further. Madison frowned slightly. "Your territory?" He held her gaze. "My name is Lorenzo Bianchi," he said clearly. She already knew it, but hearing it spoken that way felt different. "I am a capo in the DeLuca family." The words settled heavily in the quiet room. Madison's stomach dropped. Capo. DeLuca family. She knew enough about New York to understand what that meant. "Mafia," she said softly. Lorenzo did not look away. "Yes." There was no shame in it. No denial. "I control parts of Hell's Kitchen," he continued. "Certain businesses. Certain interests. Some people call me a businessman. Others call me a criminal." He paused briefly. "I am both." Madison swallowed again. "And what does that have to do with me?" she asked. Lorenzo's expression hardened slightly. "I have rules," he said. "A code." He stepped closer to the edge of the bed, but did not touch her. "One major rule," he continued evenly, "is that women are protected in my territory. Always." The word always felt heavy. "What that man did," Lorenzo added, "violates everything I stand for." Madison's chest tightened at the memory of Brian's footsteps behind her. "What will happen to him?" she asked. Lorenzo didn't hesitate. "He is being questioned." His tone suggested that questioning meant more than conversation. "And after that," she pressed. Lorenzo's gaze sharpened. "I will ensure he never harms anyone again." Madison's pulse quickened. "You mean?" She struggled for the word. "You'll kill him." The room seemed to grow quieter. Lorenzo studied her carefully. "Would that bother you?" he asked. It wasn't a challenge. It wasn't sarcasm. It was a real question. Madison's mind drifted briefly back to the streetlight, to the way her legs had failed, to the sound of Brian's voice behind her, to the certainty that she would not have walked away unharmed. Her hands trembled slightly. She looked back at Lorenzo. "No," she said honestly. "It wouldn't." There was no guilt in her voice. Only truth. Lorenzo nodded once. "He is not the kind of problem that rehabilitation fixes," he said. "He is the kind of problem that only stops one way." The finality in his tone left no room for misunderstanding. Silence settled between them again. Madison felt exhausted suddenly. The adrenaline had faded, leaving behind heaviness. "You should rest," Lorenzo said gently. He gestured toward a door on the far wall. "There's a bathroom through there. Water on the nightstand. Pain medication beside it if your head becomes worse." She noticed the glass of water and small bottle near the bed for the first time. "I'll be nearby," he continued. "If you need anything." He paused briefly, as if considering whether to say more. Then he stepped back. "Sleep," he said quietly. Madison watched as he turned and walked toward the door. He didn't rush. He didn't hover. He simply left the room and closed the door softly behind him. The quiet returned. Madison sat there for a moment, trying to make sense of everything. A drugged coffee. A streetlight. A man with dark eyes and a dangerous calm. A penthouse she never imagined stepping into. And a world she never meant to enter. Her head still ached. Her body still felt weak. But she was alive. She lay back slowly against the silk-like pillows and stared up at the unfamiliar ceiling. The room felt expensive. Safe. Controlled. Nothing like the chaos of the street. Nothing like the fear she had felt an hour, no, 7 hours earlier. Her eyelids grew heavy again. This time not from drugs. From exhaustion. And for the first time since leaving Magnolia Street Cafe, she allowed herself to close her eyes without fear. Lorenzo Bianchi was somewhere beyond the door. And she was still breathing. Morning sunlight slipped through the tall curtains, thin beams of gold cutting across the bedroom. The light felt warmer than the night before. Softer. Real. Madison blinked awake slowly. Her head no longer pounded the way it had before, but a dull ache still lingered behind her eyes. Her body felt clearer. Not normal, but steadier. The heavy fog had lifted, leaving behind weakness and soreness. She pushed herself upright carefully this time. The room did not spin. That alone felt like a victory. She swung her legs over the side of the bed and stood slowly. Her knees felt unsteady, but held her weight. The door Lorenzo had pointed out the night before led to a bathroom. She stepped inside and stopped. The space was enormous. Marble floors. Marble walls. A shower with glass walls and multiple fixtures. A bathtub big enough for 2 people. The floor was warm beneath her feet, heated. It didn't look like a bathroom in an apartment. It looked like something from a luxury hotel. On the counter sat neatly arranged toiletries. A toothbrush still sealed in plastic. New toothpaste. Fresh soap. Shampoo and conditioner. A hairbrush. Even clean towels folded precisely. For her. She stood there for a moment, taking it in. Then she began to wash. She brushed her teeth longer than necessary, trying to get rid of the bitter taste still clinging to her mouth. She washed her face twice. Then she stepped into the shower and let hot water pour over her shoulders. She scrubbed harder than usual. Not just dirt. Not just sweat. She was trying to remove the memory of the drug. The feeling of her body betraying her. The weakness in her limbs under the streetlight. She stayed under the water until her skin felt clean and warm and almost new. When she came back into the bedroom, dressed again in her cafe clothes, Lorenzo was there. He stood near the doorway, freshly showered. His hair was slightly damp. He wore jeans and a black Henley shirt. Casual, but still composed. He held out a mug. "Coffee," he said. Then lightly, not poisoned. Madison flinched. The reaction was immediate and involuntary. Lorenzo's expression changed instantly. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "That was inappropriate." He looked genuinely regretful. "It's okay," she replied, though her voice was still soft. She took the mug cautiously and lifted it to her nose first. It smelled normal. Strong. Rich. She took a careful sip. It was good. He gestured toward the hallway. "Breakfast," he said. She followed him into the kitchen. The space was as impressive as the bathroom. Wide counters. Stainless steel appliances. Floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over Manhattan. On the kitchen island sat multiple plates. Eggs. Toast. Fruit. Pancakes. More options than she could count. "I didn't know what you liked," Lorenzo said simply. "So I made several things." Madison hadn't realized how hungry she was until she sat down. Her stomach growled loudly, surprising her. She began to eat. Slowly at first. Then faster. She finished a plate of eggs. 2 pancakes. Half the fruit. A slice of toast. She hadn't eaten since her shift the night before. Lorenzo leaned against the counter, watching quietly. Not staring. Just observing. There was something approving in his expression as she regained strength. When she finally slowed down, She wiped her mouth with a napkin and looked at him. "How much do I owe you?" she asked. He frowned slightly. "For what?" "The doctor. The food. Your everything." "You owe me nothing," he said calmly. She shook her head. "Nobody helps for free." "Not for this," he replied. He poured himself more coffee. "You're free to leave whenever you want," he added. "There's no debt." Madison studied him. He didn't look like he was lying. "I would prefer," he continued, "that you stay a day or two, just to be safe." "Safe from what?" she asked. He didn't answer that immediately. Instead, he said, "There is also the matter of Brian." Her stomach tightened. "You can press charges," Lorenzo said, "or handle it differently." "Differently?" she repeated. "My way." He stepped closer, but not into her space. "Discreet," he said. "Permanent." She understood immediately. "The legal system," he went on, "means testimony, court appearances, bail, lawyers who will question what you wore, what you said, whether you led him on." Madison's jaw clenched. She could imagine it too clearly. A courtroom, strangers judging her, a defense attorney twisting the story. And if he gets out on bail, Lorenzo added quietly, if he decides to finish what he started, her fingers tightened around her mug. "My solution," he said evenly, "means he stops existing." Silence filled the kitchen. "What does agreeing to that make me?" she asked. Lorenzo's gaze softened slightly. "Human," he said. "Practical." He reached out and placed his hand gently over hers. The touch was steady, not demanding, not possessive, just warm. "You are not wrong for wanting to feel safe," he said. Madison stared at the counter for several long seconds. She thought about the streetlight, about her legs failing, about Brian's voice behind her. She looked up. "Do it," she said quietly. Lorenzo didn't react immediately. "Are you sure?" "I don't want a trial," she said. "I don't want to see him again. I don't want to wonder if he's out there." He held her gaze. "It will be done by tonight," he said. He stood straight. "I have business to handle." He moved toward the door. Madison remained at the island, her heart beating harder than she expected. When the door closed behind him, the apartment felt too large, too quiet. She walked slowly through the penthouse. 3 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, an office lined with books, artwork on the walls, a balcony overlooking the city. It felt like stepping into someone else's life. In a guest bedroom, she found clothes laid neatly on the bed. Jeans, sweaters, underwear, all her size, tags still attached. She stared at them for a long moment. Then she showered again and changed into the new clothes. They fit perfectly. She tried reading a book from the shelf. The words blurred together. She turned on the television. Couldn't focus. She paced instead. By the time the clock neared 8, her nerves were tight. The door opened. She heard Lorenzo's voice speaking Italian to someone in the hallway. Then footsteps. He entered the living room. "It's done," he said. The words were simple. "Brian no longer exists." She inhaled slowly. "He wasn't your first," Lorenzo continued. "We found evidence. At least 5 other women." Madison's stomach twisted. "You were not the first," he said quietly. "But you would have been the last." She waited for guilt to rise. It didn't. "I feel relieved," she admitted. "You should," Lorenzo replied. "Relief is natural." He stepped closer and examined her face carefully. "You look stronger," he said. "I am. I would still prefer you stay a few more days," he added. "Safe from what?" she asked again. He didn't answer that immediately. Instead, he said, "There is also the matter of Brian." Her stomach tightened. "You can press charges," Lorenzo said, "or handle it differently." "Differently?" she repeated. "My way." He stepped closer, but not into her space. "Discreet," he said. "Permanent." She understood immediately. "The legal system," he went on, "means testimony, court appearances, bail, lawyers who will question what you wore, what you said, whether you led him on." Madison's jaw clenched. She could imagine it too clearly. A courtroom, strangers judging her, a defense attorney twisting the story. And if he gets out on bail, Lorenzo added quietly, if he decides to finish what he started. Her fingers tightened around her mug. "My solution," he said evenly, "means he stops existing." Silence filled the kitchen. "What does agreeing to that make me?" she asked. Lorenzo's gaze softened slightly. "Human," he said. "Practical." He reached out and placed his hand gently over hers. The touch was steady, not demanding, not possessive, just warm. "You are not wrong for wanting to feel safe," he said. Madison stared at the counter for several long seconds. She thought about the streetlight, about her legs failing, about Brian's voice behind her. She looked up. "Do it," she said quietly. Lorenzo didn't react immediately. "Are you sure?" "I don't want a trial," she said. "I don't want to see him again. I don't want to wonder if he's out there." He held her gaze. "It will be done by tonight," he said. He stood straight. "I have business to handle." He moved toward the door. Madison remained at the island, her heart beating harder than she expected. When the door closed behind him, the apartment felt too large, too quiet. She walked slowly through the penthouse. 3 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, an office lined with books, artwork on the walls, a balcony overlooking the city. It felt like stepping into someone else's life. In a guest bedroom, she found clothes laid neatly on the bed. Jeans, sweaters, underwear, all her size, tags still attached. She stared at them for a long moment. Then she showered again and changed into the new clothes. They fit perfectly. She tried reading a book from the shelf. The words blurred together. She turned on the television. Couldn't focus. She paced instead. By the time the clock neared 8, her nerves were tight. The door opened. She heard Lorenzo's voice speaking Italian to someone in the hallway. Then footsteps. He entered the living room. "It's done," he said. The words were simple. "Brian no longer exists." She inhaled slowly. "He wasn't your first," Lorenzo continued. "We found evidence. At least 5 other women." Madison's stomach twisted. "You were not the first," he said quietly. "But you would have been the last." She waited for guilt to rise. It didn't. "I feel relieved," she admitted. "You should," Lorenzo replied. "Relief is natural." He stepped closer and examined her face carefully. "You look stronger," he said. "I am. I would still prefer you stay a few more days," he added. "Safe from what?" she asked again. "Loose ends," he said. "Questions. Anyone who might have known him. Anyone watching." Madison looked around the penthouse. At the windows. At the city below. Then back at him. "Okay," she said. She would stay. For now. That evening, Lorenzo insisted on cooking. "Keep me company," he said as he moved around the kitchen with quiet confidence. Madison sat on one of the high stools at the kitchen island, watching him. He rolled up the sleeves of his black Henley slightly and moved between the stove and counter with practiced ease. The way he handled a knife, the way he tasted sauce and adjusted seasoning, it was clear he had done this many times before. The air slowly filled with the smell of garlic, tomatoes, and fresh herbs. They began with small talk. Favorite foods. Favorite movies. Books they had read. Madison told him she liked simple comfort food and old romantic comedies. Lorenzo admitted he preferred classic films and novels he could read more than once. The conversation felt normal, almost ordinary. Then it shifted. "Why New York?" Lorenzo asked, glancing at her over his shoulder. "You don't sound like you grew up here." "I didn't," she said. "I'm from Ohio." He nodded. "I thought so. I came for opportunity," she continued quietly. "I thought New York would mean doors opening." She watched him stir the sauce. "I wanted graphic design work," she admitted. "That was the plan." "And?" he asked gently. "And it didn't work," she said with a small shrug. "No job without experience. No experience without job. And I can't afford unpaid internships." She folded her hands in her lap. "Waitressing pays rent," she said. "That's it. It's survival, not passion." Lorenzo was silent for a moment. Then he said, "I looked at your phone last night." She blinked. "What?" "While you were asleep," he clarified. "Your portfolio." Madison stared at him. Under normal circumstances, she might have been furious. But nothing about her life right now felt normal. "You shouldn't have," she said. "I know," he replied calmly. "I'm sorry." He turned off the stove and faced her fully. "But you're talented," he added. "Very." She looked away slightly. "I've heard otherwise," she said. "A lot." "Rejections," he guessed. "Too many to count." Lorenzo leaned back against the counter. "I don't understand poverty the way you do," he admitted. "I never had to worry about rent." Madison appreciated the honesty. "But I do understand being underestimated," he continued. She looked up. "People think they know me," he said. "They see violence, crime. They think that's all there is." He gestured lightly around the kitchen. "They don't see the philosophy books in my office. They don't see the art I collect. They don't see this." He nodded toward the dinner he had prepared. "Cooking," he added, almost casually. Madison smiled slightly. So we're both misunderstood creatives, she said. Exactly, he replied with a faint grin. We should start a club, she teased. The underappreciated club. Membership of 2, he said. That made her laugh. A real laugh. The first real one since the streetlight. It surprised her how good it felt. They ate at the island, the food warm and comforting. After dinner, Lorenzo poured wine and led her to the couch. They sat close but not touching at first. Madison turned slightly toward him. Why did you stop? She asked. Last night. You could have just called the police. Lorenzo's expression changed. It's personal, he said quietly. She waited. My sister, he said after a moment. Years ago. She was drugged at college. Madison's chest tightened. She doesn't talk about it, he continued. But I found the man responsible. He didn't elaborate. He didn't need to. I ended it, he finished simply. The room felt heavier. Monsters don't always look like monsters, he added. Sometimes they look normal. Madison nodded slowly. You saved me, she said. I did what should have been done, he replied. Everyone else failed you by walking past. He reached out and gently tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. The touch was careful, intimate. Her breath caught slightly. Tell me to stop, he said quietly. She blinked. What? If this is too soon, he clarified. If you feel vulnerable. If you think I'm taking advantage. Tell me now. His eyes held hers steadily. Madison swallowed. She didn't feel pressured. She didn't feel trapped. She felt safe. I don't want distance, she admitted. Lorenzo's voice lowered. Then I'm going to kiss you. He paused. One more chance to say no. She held his gaze. Kiss me, she said softly. He leaned in slowly. The first contact was gentle. Careful. His lips brushed hers like he was asking permission even after she had given it. She leaned into him slightly. The kiss deepened. Not rushed. Not demanding. His hand rested lightly at her waist, giving her time to pull away if she wanted. She didn't. When they separated briefly, the tension between them was thick. I've been thinking about this since this morning, he admitted. She gave him a small smile. You're dangerous, she said lightly. Are you afraid? He asked. She considered the question honestly. No, she said. I feel safe. His hand moved to cradle the side of her face. Nothing will hurt you, he said quietly. Not while you're with me. The words should have sounded extreme. They didn't. They felt steady. They stood together slowly, moving toward his bedroom. At the doorway, he stopped. Free choice, he said firmly. Not gratitude. Not fear. If you don't want this, say it. She stepped closer. I want this, she said clearly. He searched her face once more. Then he kissed her again. This time longer. They took their time. He was attentive, careful, watching her reactions, making sure she was comfortable. There was intensity, yes, but never force. Every step was mutual. Every touch was answered. Later, when they lay together beneath dark sheets, her breathing finally slowing, Lorenzo brushed his thumb gently over her shoulder. You're mine, he murmured. The words weren't harsh. They were certain. I don't share, he continued. When I choose someone, I commit. She turned her head slightly to look at him. And I've chosen you. He brushed his lips softly against her temple. I'll support your work, he said. Your career. Your future. Whatever you build, I'll stand behind it. She felt warmth settle in her chest. Not fear. Not doubt. Something steadier. She rested her head against him. For the first time since everything had changed, she allowed herself to relax fully. Madison fell asleep feeling protected. And chosen. A new routine formed inside the penthouse. It happened quietly, without discussion, as if both of them simply stepped into roles that fit. Lorenzo left early most mornings. His work kept him busy during the day. He moved through the apartment with quiet efficiency, showered, dressed sharply, phone already in hand before he walked out the door. But before he left, he always made coffee. Every single morning. He handed Madison her mug with the same steady look, as if that small ritual mattered. Work hard, he would say. She began using the long dining table as her workspace. Laptop open, sketchbook beside it, design software glowing on the screen. She updated her portfolio, cleaned up old drafts, took online courses she had bookmarked months ago but never had time for, watched tutorials, practiced new layout styles. In the evenings, Lorenzo returned and asked about her progress. What did you work on today? Did you finish that mock-up? Show me. He listened seriously. Even when he didn't understand every technical detail, he treated her work like it mattered. Because to her it did. One afternoon, she refreshed her email and felt her chest tighten. Another rejection. She stared at the screen for a long time before the tears came. Not dramatic sobbing, just quiet disappointment. 38 rejections now. She sat in Lorenzo's office, shoulders shaking slightly, trying to stay silent. She didn't hear him enter at first. He crouched beside her chair. "What's wrong?" he asked immediately. She turned the laptop slightly so he could see. "Another one," she said softly. "That makes 38. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "Maybe they're right," she whispered. "Maybe I'm not good enough." Lorenzo's jaw tightened. "You are not going back to waitressing," he said firmly. "I might not have a choice," she replied. "You do." He stood up and began pacing slowly. "I have connections," he said. "People who owe me favors." She shook her head. "I don't want a job because someone's afraid of you," she said. "I want to earn it." "You will earn it," he replied. He stopped pacing and looked directly at her. "I open the door," he said. "You walk through and prove yourself." She hesitated. "That still feels like cheating." "It's not cheating," he said calmly. "It's networking. Every successful person uses connections. No one climbs alone." She looked at the screen again. 38. Her confidence felt thin. "You prove yourself once you're inside," he continued. "But you need the chance first." She took a long breath. "Okay," she said quietly. "Call in your favors." He didn't smile triumphantly. He simply nodded. Within 2 days, her phone buzzed with 3 interview invitations. 3. She stared at the emails in disbelief. Within a week, she had 2 job offers. The salary numbers made her blink twice. More money than she had ever made in a year of waitressing. She accepted a position at Radiant Studio Group in Midtown. Her first day was terrifying. The office was sleek and modern. Glass walls. Open creative spaces. Designers who spoke confidently about projects and clients. She felt out of place at first. Underqualified. Small. Her first assignment was a restaurant redesign project. She worked late that week. Revised concepts. Adjusted color palettes. Polished presentations. When the clients saw her design, they loved it. They praised the layout, the lighting concept, the atmosphere she created. Her boss called her into his office afterward. "Excellent work," he said. She walked back to her desk stunned. Maybe she did belong. She called Lorenzo that night. "I think I'm actually good at this," she said breathlessly. "I know you are," he replied without hesitation. He celebrated every small victory. When she finished her first week, he took her out to dinner. When she completed her first full project, he sent flowers to her office. The 3rd time flowers arrived, she called him. "You're making too big a deal out of this," she said. "It's not just a job," he replied. "It's your future." She rolled her eyes, though she was smiling. "I like spoiling you," he added casually. She had noticed his protectiveness growing in small ways. If a male coworker mentioned working late with her, Lorenzo would ask more questions. Not angry, just attentive. He texted her often during the day. "Where are you?" At work, she would reply. "Who are you with?" "My team." "Just checking." She teased him about it. "You don't need to monitor me," she said once. "I'm not monitoring," he replied calmly. "I'm making sure." "Making sure of what?" "That you're safe." She sighed but didn't push it further. He never tried to stop her from working. Never discouraged her independence. He simply liked knowing where she was. Their evenings developed a rhythm. She would come home with stories about office politics and client meetings. He would listen carefully. Sometimes he brought her lunch unexpectedly. He walked into the studio lobby one afternoon carrying takeout containers, dressed sharply as always. Her coworkers stared. He kissed her cheek and handed her the bag. "Don't skip meals," he said quietly. She felt both embarrassed and strangely proud. At home, she sometimes found herself sketching at the kitchen island while he worked on his laptop nearby. 2 different worlds sharing the same space. 2 ambitions unfolding side by side. As the weeks passed, her confidence grew. She stopped checking rejection emails. Stopped doubting her talent. She belonged at Radiant Studio Group. And she knew it. Lorenzo still celebrated every milestone. She still told him he was dramatic. He still insisted she deserved it. Their relationship deepened not through grand gestures, but through repetition. Morning coffee. Evening questions. Shared meals. Shared space. The intensity between them never faded. It simply became woven into daily life. Madison began to see a future she hadn't imagined before. Not just survival, not just rent, but growth, achievement, and someone standing beside her, proud of every step. Their life together was no longer built only on the night they met. It was built on mornings, on emails, on sketches, on small victories, on routine, and it felt real. 2 months into their relationship, Lorenzo told Madison it was time. "My family wants to meet you," he said one evening. She froze mid-sip of her tea. "Your family," she repeated. "Yes," he replied calmly. "Sunday dinner. Here." Her stomach flipped. Sunday dinner sounded simple, normal, but nothing about Lorenzo's life was ordinary. He planned it carefully. He insisted on cooking himself. That Sunday afternoon, the penthouse smelled of tomatoes, garlic, olive oil, and fresh basil. Pots simmered. Pasta dough rested beneath a towel. Music played softly in Italian from a speaker near the window. Madison tried to help. She chopped vegetables carefully, double-checking each cut. She wiped the counter twice. She adjusted her sweater 3 times. "You're nervous," Lorenzo observed. "A little," she admitted. "They will like you," he said simply. The doorbell rang. Madison's heart jumped. Lorenzo wiped his hands and walked to the door. When he opened it, 2 women stepped inside. The first was Caterina Bianchi. She was petite, elegant, with sharp dark eyes that softened when she smiled. Her hair was neatly styled, streaked lightly with gray. Behind her stood Giulia Bianchi. Younger, beautiful, observant, protective in the way she held her posture. Caterina stepped forward first. "So," she said warmly, looking Madison up and down, "you are the girl who has my son smiling again." Lorenzo exhaled softly. "Mama," he warned lightly. Caterina waved him off. "What?" "It's true." She turned back to Madison and extended her hand. "I am Caterina." "Madison," she replied, shaking her hand carefully. Caterina's grip was firm but warm. "You have done something good," Caterina said. "He has been serious for too long." Madison flushed slightly. "I didn't make him happy," she said honestly. "He saved me." The room grew quieter for a moment. Giulia stepped forward. "We know what happened," she said gently. "He told us." Madison braced herself for judgment. It didn't come. Instead, Giulia's expression softened. "I'm sorry that happened to you," she said sincerely. "And I'm grateful he was there." Madison blinked. "Thank you," she replied quietly. Caterina reached out and touched Madison's arm. "My son," she said firmly, "has a good heart. People talk. They say things. But he protects who needs protecting." Madison glanced at Lorenzo. He stood slightly tense, watching her closely. "I've seen his good side," Madison said. Lorenzo's shoulders relaxed slightly. They moved to the dining table. Lorenzo served dish after dish of traditional Italian food, pasta, roasted vegetables, warm bread, wine poured generously. Conversation began cautiously. Caterina asked about Madison's work. Giulia asked about the design firm. Madison answered carefully at first, but as the meal continued, the atmosphere shifted. Caterina told stories about Lorenzo as a child. "He used to refuse to share his toys," she said with a laugh. "Always possessive." Lorenzo groaned softly. "Mama." "It is true," she insisted. Giulia added her own memory. "He once punched a boy in school because he thought the boy insulted me," she said, smiling slightly. "Very dramatic." Madison laughed. The tension in her shoulders eased. Dinner stretched into hours. Wine glasses refilled. Stories grew louder. Giulia's initial suspicion faded gradually. Her posture softened. Her questions became less guarded. Caterina watched the way Lorenzo looked at Madison. Watched the way Madison listened to him. Near the end of the evening, Caterina leaned back in her chair. "You will come every Sunday now," she said decisively. Madison blinked. "If you would like," she replied politely. "It is not a question," Caterina said with a playful smile. "You are welcome." When the evening ended, Lorenzo walked them to the door. Madison stood slightly behind him, unsure what to say. Caterina hugged her briefly before leaving. Giulia squeezed her hand. After the door closed, the apartment felt quiet again. Lorenzo turned to her slowly. "They like you," he said. Madison smiled. "They were kind. My mother told me not to ruin this," he admitted. "Wise woman," she teased gently. He stepped closer. "She worries," he continued. "Giulia is protective because women in the past liked the lifestyle more than me." Madison nodded slowly. "That makes sense." He leaned against the wall, more relaxed now. My father died 10 years ago, he said quietly. Heart attack. Her expression softened. I'm sorry. Stress, he continued. Work. Responsibility. He looked at her. My mother worries I will end the same way. Madison stepped closer. And will you? She asked softly. He studied her face for a moment. You make me want something different, he admitted. Different how? A life outside of work, he said simply. A reason to slow down. Her chest tightened slightly at that. She reached for his hand. I like them, she said gently. Your mother. Your sister. He intertwined his fingers with hers. They like you, he repeated. They stood there quietly for a moment. Not rushed. Not dramatic. Just steady. There was something about meeting his family that made everything feel more real. More permanent. It wasn't just passion anymore. It wasn't just intensity. It was integration. His world slowly opening to her, and her stepping into it without fear. He brushed his thumb lightly over her knuckles. You handled that well, he said softly. I was terrified, she admitted. He smiled faintly. You didn't look it. She leaned into him slightly. This feels serious, she said. It is, he replied without hesitation. He placed a hand gently at her waist. I don't bring people into my family's home unless I see a future. Her heart beat faster. And you see one? She asked. Yes. No hesitation. No doubt. She rested her forehead lightly against his chest. For the first time, the idea of permanence didn't scare her. It felt steady, grounded, like something built carefully, not rushed. Sunday dinner had not pushed her away. It had anchored her deeper. And as Lorenzo held her in the quiet penthouse, Madison realized she was no longer just surviving. She was building something. And she wasn't alone. Nearly 4 months after the night under the streetlight, Madison's life barely resembled what it had been. She woke each morning in a penthouse overlooking Manhattan instead of a small studio apartment. She drank coffee that Lorenzo made before work. She dressed for meetings instead of tying on an apron. She had a job she loved at Radiant Studio Group. The office felt natural to her now. The confidence that once felt forced had settled into something steady. She walked into meetings knowing she belonged. Her ideas were heard. Her designs were chosen. Magnolia Street Cafe was no longer part of her life. She had never stepped foot inside it again. Lorenzo had sent someone to collect her final paycheck and the few belongings she had kept in the employee locker. She never walked past that corner booth again. Never saw the door close at midnight. Never smelled burnt coffee at closing time. That chapter ended without her returning. Her old studio in Inwood still existed. Technically, it was hers, but she rarely went there. Dust probably gathered slowly on the windowsill. The tiny kitchen remained unused, the narrow bed untouched. Most of her belongings had migrated to the penthouse. Her clothes filled part of Lorenzo's closet. Her toiletries lined the counter in his bathroom. Her sketchbooks rested on the dining table. Her favorite tea was stocked in his kitchen beside his espresso machine. The space no longer felt like his alone. It felt shared. Yet sometimes, late at night, when the city outside quieted and the room darkened, Madison found herself replaying that night. The street, the lights, the moment her legs failed. She would imagine, unwillingly, the version of events where Lorenzo's SUV never stopped, where no door opened, where Brian reached her. The thought alone made her chest tighten. One night, as she lay awake staring at the ceiling, Lorenzo shifted beside her. You're thinking too much, he murmured. She hadn't realized he was awake. Sorry, she whispered. He pulled her closer, wrapping an arm around her waist. Don't imagine that other timeline, he said quietly. It doesn't exist. She swallowed. Sometimes I wonder, she admitted. What would have happened? He tightened his hold slightly. I stopped, he said simply. You're safe. You're here. She turned her face toward him in the dark. Why me? She asked again. He was silent for a moment. I can't save everyone, he said. But I saved you. That's not an answer. He shifted so he could look at her more clearly, even in the dim light. You were still fighting, he said. She blinked. You were drugged, he continued, barely able to stand. But you were still moving, still trying to get away. You refused to give up. Her throat tightened. That's why I stopped, he said. You were fighting. Tears welled unexpectedly in her eyes. That's the nicest thing anyone has ever said to me, she whispered. He brushed his thumb under her eye gently. You're a fighter, he said. You just didn't have someone in your corner. And now, she asked softly. Now you do. He kissed her forehead. I'm not going anywhere. She hesitated. Sometimes I wonder if this is just trauma bonding, she admitted quietly. If we're connected because of that night. He studied her seriously. He spoke a few words in Italian, soft, steady, filled with meaning. My heart, he translated simply. My life. He brushed his hand along her hair. This is not just fear, he said. This is choice. She lay there thinking about it. Their relationship wasn't simple. It wasn't conventional. It had begun in darkness. Lorenzo's world still contained shadows she didn't fully see. There were parts of his life he didn't describe in detail. Conversations he stepped away to take. Meetings he never explained. The darkness existed, but it never touched her. He kept it separate, protected her from it. And she understood something clearly now. She was choosing this. Choosing safety. Choosing protection. Choosing a man who was dangerous to others but gentle with her. It was messy. It was complicated. But it was real. She turned toward him fully. You're possessive, she said softly. Yes, he replied without apology. And protective. Yes. And intense. He smiled faintly in the dark. Yes. She reached up and touched his face. And I'm still here. He covered her hand with his. You are mine, he said quietly. Not as ownership, but as commitment. And you are protected, he added. She felt steady, secure. The fear that sometimes crept in dissolved under the warmth of his presence. Her life had changed completely in less than 4 months. From struggling waitress to successful designer. From small apartment to penthouse. From walking alone at midnight to falling asleep in strong arms. She knew outsiders might question it, might judge it, might not understand. But she did. She understood what safety felt like. She understood what it meant to be valued. She understood that love could begin in unexpected ways. As the city lights flickered beyond the windows, she rested her head against his chest. His heartbeat was steady beneath her ear. I'm not afraid anymore, she said quietly. You never will be, he replied. They lay there in the dark, wrapped together. Not perfect, not simple, but certain. And as the night settled fully around the penthouse, Madison realized something clearly. Sometimes the most dangerous man in the city is the one who keeps you safest. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more interesting stories.